we're gonna stand united as a party behind our nominee to defeat Barack Obama and to restore the values that have made America the greatest nation in the history of the earth.
So not a very good night for Mitt Romney. What does he have to do to regain his momentum? That's the question for my all-star panel tonight. Amy Holmes, anchor of Glenn Beck's TV's The Blaze and host of Real News. Andrew Breitbart of Breitbart.com. Michael Reagan, author of The New Reagan Revolution and, of course, the son of Ronald Reagan. And Carol Roth, author of The Entrepreneur Equation. The most stellar lineup with the longest description. So we maintain our record. Let me start with you, Amy. Wow, what a night.
Definitely a night. I mean, they said that it was a beauty contest. Well, I think that Mitt Romney just got a bit of a black eye. But I think it started last week when he stepped on his own victory with that gaffe on CNN about not caring about the poor people. You can say that it was a gaffe or taken out of context, but it stopped the momentum. And I also heard Michelle Bachmann tonight give a very interesting analysis that at least in Minnesota, what may also have been part of Rick Santorum's big win there was President Obama's decision about the Catholic hospitals and universities, institutions, etc., vis-a-vis Obamacare, that this was a vote for the strong social conservative in the GOP primary to go up against that decision.
Yeah, Andrew Breitbart, I mean, you can certainly tell by Rick Santorum's speech tonight that he sees a real gap now opening up for him as what he calls the real conservative with real conservative values. And it's hard to argue, given tonight's performance, that he may not have a real shot now, isn't it?
You know, I heard Ben Smith in the previous segment talking about Mitt Romney being the fait accompli. I talked to Carol the other week when we were in a studio together, and she was talking about this being Mitt Romney playing prevent defense. But as we've watched in football games in the last minute with prevent defense, we've seen teams lose that which was a given. And I'm looking at CPAC, the big conservative conference, at the end of the week, which starts on Thursday and goes through Saturday. And you've got people like Sarah Palin showing up there. You've got Newt Gingrich speaking there. You've got, I believe, Rick Santorum's going to be there, and even Mitt Romney's going to be there. I think that you're going to see at CPAC speeches and a coagulation of thought that is going to potentially change the dynamic that you see here. Until Mitt Romney reaches out to conservatives, which he's chosen not to do, this thing is not over.
Yeah, Michael Reagan, I mean, this is obviously a pretty bad night for Mitt Romney. Not a great night for Newt Gingrich. I mean, all the talk tomorrow is going to be about Rick Santorum. No sign of Newt Gingrich anywhere in these three states. He's saying, look, it's all about Super Tuesday in Texas. But, you know, it might be all over for him if he's not careful.
You know, it's actually before I came on the air, I tweeted, is Giuliani running the Newt Gingrich campaign? You know, the Southern strategy, the Florida strategy, which didn't work. And it is not a good night at all for Newt Gingrich. He didn't show up. He wasn't there. He's got this new strategy about taking the Reagan Southern states here. And by walking away from it, he really left it open for Rick Santorum to say, hey, one-on-one, I can beat Mitt Romney. And this is the first time anyone has gotten over 50% of the vote in this whole primary season. That's huge for Rick Santorum. He does it because he has passion. He has a great story that he tells, and that story brings you into him, and he's able to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, having interviewed him at length 10 days ago or whatever it was.
It was a great interview.
Yeah, well, it was fascinating because he draws you in on a personal level. And not to say the others don't, I've interviewed them all now, but I felt with Santorum that, and I've said this before on the show, that whether you agree with him or not on policy, as a human being, he's impressive. He has an empathy, he has a directness about him, he sticks to his principles. All those things work, I think, with voters.
You've got to have passion. People want a story. You know, I've said this for so long. My father spoke to us in parables. We have too many politicians today speaking to us in sound bites.
Yeah.
And Mitt talks to us in sound bites. Newt speaks to us in sound bites. And Rick Santorum's out there telling the story. So is Ron Paul out there telling the stories. But again, conservatives, again, outpace the moderate in the race.
Yeah, I mean, Carol Roth, I mean, it's a fascinating race to observe from the outside. But what is the reality here? Romney obviously has all the money. He has all the infrastructure. He has this image of the front runner. And yet right now, you know, if I was a betting man, I'd say this is going to run for a long time, and I wouldn't rule out somebody like Rick Santorum, not after tonight.
No, I mean, we just came off of a Super Bowl that started with a safety, so 2012 is wide open for anything to happen, Piers. I think the learning here is that this reminded me about like a bunch of guys who are trying to woo a woman. And you have Gingrich and Mitt Romney who are duking it out and having this macho contest, and they're forgetting about the woman. And then you've got this guy over here in a sweater vest who's saying, hey, I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to flatter you. I might even buy you some flowers and chocolate. And you know what? He's building that connection that Michael was talking about. And that's what people want. The American people want a connection. They want an emotional connection. Mitt Romney is not giving that to them. And this is, again, a time he needs to evolve and he needs to learn. It's his race to lose, but he needs to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, Amy Holmes, why is Mitt Romney not able to seal this deal? Why is he unable, it appears, to show the kind of passion that maybe Rick Santorum is filling that void now?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting that Mitt Romney tonight, he was very explicit that he's the guy in the race who's running as an outsider. He's never held a job in Washington in elective office up there on Capitol Hill, which was, of course, kind of a sideswipe at Rick Santorum. But at the same time, he hasn't been in the conservative trenches either. So when he made that gaffe last week, a lot of conservatives said, hey, wait a minute, one of the reasons why I became a conservative were all those welfare debates in the 1990s that conservatives had the better approach to poverty. Not that we're ignoring poverty and fobbing off the poor onto the government. And in fact, government was part of the problem, and that civic institutions, those intermediating institutions, are what's important. And Mitt Romney didn't seem to know that. That wasn't a natural go-to place. So what Mitt Romney is saying is strength is also, on the other hand, a weakness, that he hasn't really been marinating in those conservative ideas that have been propelling the conservative movement inside Washington.
Yeah, Andrew Breitbart, I mean, we've got Super Tuesday looming, and it seems to me it's becoming ever more crucial, isn't it, when you've got so many states, so many delegates at stake, and really right now this kind of unstoppable Romney momentum has really stopped in its tracks. I mean, I think this, somebody described it, I think it was David Gergen from CNN, described it as he's limping into Super Tuesday with 2 flat tires.
Well, I would say that Mitt Romney is having a bad Tuesday night. I would also say that we pundits, who are so great at pontificating, the art of punditry is quite the loser, because every single Tuesday we come here having been proved that we were wrong the week before. And I think that
Hey, wait a minute. Speak for yourself, Andrew.
Well, I was wrong.
I think we called the conservatives for winning.
I tell you what,
let's hold that thought, Andrew. Hold your answer. Let's have a break. Come back, and I want you all to regroup as a group of pundits. Believe in yourselves again. Let's start again after the break. Back with my all-star panel, though Andrew Breitbart quite rightly pointing out that if I was to replay most of your predictions over the last few weeks, we'd all look pretty stupid. Andrew, why has it been such a roller coaster race, do you think?
Well, I think a huge issue here is that the momentum in the conservative movement started with the Tea Party, and Mitt Romney has never really had broken bread with the Tea Party, and they're waiting for him to call them and say, hey, maybe we should get together and have a conversation. I think that with Santorum, he just doesn't have the money. People don't know him that well. The mainstream media would certainly like him to be the candidate against Barack Obama, because in those blue states, in that New York and LA media market, they sure have them targeted as a certain type. But I think that, as Michael Reagan was talking about early, there's something likable about him, and the American people, as you saw tonight, don't necessarily listen to what the mainstream media tells them to do.
Yeah, I mean, he is likable, and one of the reasons I think is that he has this amazing family, this extraordinarily powerful story that goes with him, which I spoke to him about at length, and there's something rather inspiring about the
story he tells about his grandfather.
All of it. And I think also that speech he made in Iowa, when he really did move people, and he went to every place in Iowa to guarantee that kind of hard graft and real old-fashioned American story is what's drawing people in, isn't it?
Absolutely right. He's got the story. He's got the passion that really we've been looking for, what the electorate's been looking for. I mean, one of the problems Mitt Romney has, like Andrew was talking about, was reaching out to conservatives. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, who's endorsed, in fact, Mitt Romney? Bob Dole, John McCain. How'd they do when they ran for president of the United States? And the Tea Party exists because of people like John McCain. And so the Tea Party, when they see John McCain on your team, start to back off of this. Ask Susan Engel, you know, in Nevada and all of those issues. And so all of a sudden he starts losing traction because even though he's making inroads in the Tea Party, the second they see John McCain show up, Tea Party people start to leave. And we very much remember George Bush not having the doors open to conservatives while he was president of the United States, and we don't want to go through that again.
Let me bring in Carol. If you're Newt Gingrich or Mitt Romney now, what do you do, given there's not much going on now before Super Tuesday? We've got Maine, we've got Arizona, but really it's all gearing up now to this hugely important day where there could be casualties. I mean, people may well be pulling out afterwards, and that you would have thought before that that might be Rick Santorum, but you won't be thinking that now.
No, certainly not. I think if you're Newt Gingrich, the first thing you do is you go to Adelson, you beg for more money. I think that's going to be Newt's biggest issue. He's got no momentum here, and if he runs out of money, even though he's sort of the TJ Maxx of candidates, he does the max with the minimum, he still needs some money in order to be able to compete. So I think that's his strategy. Mitt Romney, on the other hand, needs to get out of his bubble. You're talking about Rick Santorum's family. We know very little about Mitt Romney's family. They seem like they're really nice and that they have this fantastic family unit, but he's kind of shielded them. He hasn't brought them in. He hasn't leveraged them as an asset. So he needs to talk with his PR team. He needs to do more interviews. He needs to bring his family in. We need to get to know him better. And if we don't, then this can be a very, very different race.
I also think bringing Amy Holmes here, I mean, what I found odd about Mitt Romney is having interviewed him twice earlier in the year, last year, he's just gone AWOL now. He doesn't do very many interviews at all with CNN, certainly won't come on this show at the moment for reasons that baffle me, whereas the other candidates are willing to come and put themselves forward and actually, I think, benefit from doing longer, more detailed, more personal interviews. You get to know them, you get to warm to them, to empathize. Mitt Romney seems fixed on this strategy of, I'll just do soundbite interviews and I'm going to keep being vaguely robotic.
Well, I don't have an inside track on his campaign strategy, but I would imagine that they're trying to control the message, and they have plenty of money to be running those campaign ads, strategically to try to project that message. Whereas his opponents, Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich, they need that earned media. They need to sit with you in order to get the attention to be able to keep moving forward. But in Mitt Romney's defense tonight, he did give a very touching story about his own father's bootstraps to riches story.
I suspect we're going to see a lot more of that. In fact, my money would be on Mitt Romney being on this show for an extended person interview before very long, and I hope he's watching. All-star panel, thank you. Don't get too down about Andrew about all these terrible predictions, because mine have been worse than anybody's.
They'll forget.
I'm still here,
They'll forget about us.
That's the beauty of being a pundit. You can just change your mind relentlessly. Thanks all very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.